Pat Dougherty is our guest to whom we interview now, one of 4 candidates for the Court of Common Pleas here in Indiana County. Good morning.
Good morning, Todd. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. Good to have you with us. I'm going to start with an introductory type of question.
Sure.
And, of course, we want to remind folks that all of the candidates get the same questions in the same order. Whether we get through the entire list of questions just depends upon how long each of the responses are. So the first question is, what are the 1 or 2 things that you feel the voters need to know about you and about your judicial philosophy?
Well, the first thing is that, I am a lifelong resident of Indiana County, which means that I share many of the same values and beliefs that those of you at home share. I'm a member of a local church. I raised my family here. So I think that's important that people understand that, I have tremendous ties to this community and a great love for Indiana County. The other thing is that, when you look at courtroom experience, I believe that mine pales compared to all the other candidates. As the district attorney for the last 6 years, and prior to that as an assistant district attorney, I've personally tried over 33 jury trials. I have handled all different types of criminal proceedings, but in addition to that, Todd, I was a civil lawyer for 10 years prior to becoming elected DA. So I've handled custody cases, I've handled divorce cases, adoption cases, medical malpractice, those type of complex litigation issues, land use issues, whether it's injunctions involving oil and gas companies. I've handled those. I have spent the majority of my career in the courtroom handling litigation, and I think that experience is what we need on the bench.
This particular seat on the Court of Common Pleas has traditionally been dedicated to family-oriented cases. How would you like for the court to be defined moving forward from here?
Well, Indiana County is this, we have 3 judges. And so when we say that it's just going to be a family court position, I think that sometimes gets a different view or a negative view maybe. And number one, it is a Court of Common Pleas judgeship. And depending on the makeup of the court, your assignments can always change. One day you could be doing family court. The next day you could be doing an asbestos case or summary appeals or a criminal matter. I don't believe Indiana County truly has the luxury to say you are just a family law judge. And I think we've learned from the experiences in the past. And I think moving forward, you're going to see this judge handles various things. And, Judge Hannah handled, when she was on the bench, she handled different things at different times in her career. So to say, if we had 12 judges, then sure, we could probably get away with specialization. Here with 3, I don't think we have that luxury. So moving forward, I anticipate this to be a ordinary, regular old common pleas judgeship as we've seen with Judge Martin and Judge Bianco.
In your experience watching judges conduct court proceedings, what are some of the more difficult aspects of being a common pleas court judge in Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Well, in Pennsylvania, number one, it doesn't matter who you like or anything like that. We have to follow the law. No matter what the instance is brought in front of us, you have to listen to the litigants and you have to follow the law. And sometimes that's tough because maybe you agree personally with one of the litigants. But if the law doesn't support that, you have to rule following the law. To do so otherwise would be in violation of the oath that judges take. So, I think that's probably one of the things that's tough. And you have to understand, you live in this community. So any hot button issue, if you would, is going to come before the court. And we need somebody, and we have that in our current judges, but we need a judge that has been battle tested, who has had to stand up and deal with those type of hot button issues, if you would. And I believe in my career, my experience has shown that I'm able to do that and that I have done that for the citizens of the county.
There have been some recent Supreme Court rulings in recent years, as a matter of fact, that have affected sentencing guidelines for both juvenile and adult cases, and for juveniles being tried as adult. Do you favor mandatory minimum sentences?
Well, number one, as a judicial candidate, again, and I don't want to sound like I'm copping out here, but to say I favor or disfavor, as judges or judicial candidates, we really can't take stands. Now, that being said, I would follow the law of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania at the time. And I think that's what any judge has to do. I believe personally that the judge is in the best position to weigh all the different factors that come into a sentence. And so that if we have mandatory minimum sentences, you're kind of telling the judge, we don't trust your judgment. We don't trust your ability to be able to, when a case is warranted, to sentence, to a longer term of incarceration, I would say. But I think it's important that judges have the ability and have the authority to, listen to all the facts, weigh everything out, and make the best decision for everyone involved in the case. What I also, the thing with mandatory minimums are, when you hear the word mandatory minimum, okay, the judge could always give more than the mandatory minimum. He could also give, if we didn't have that mandatory minimum, certainly he could give less. But I think it's important that judges maintain that ability to have the human element into this. If not, we could just put numbers into a computer and let the computer determine sentencing.
When a higher court reverses a common pleas court judge's ruling, how would that make you feel? How has that made you feel in the past?
Well, look, again, judges are humans. I have not met a human yet that has not made a mistake. Judges are, in my opinion, you make the best decision that you can given the facts and the law at the time. Certainly laws can change. And if a law changes down the road, I'll give you a great example of something that I've had to deal with in my own career. The United States Supreme Court decision, it's called Birchfield. Birchfield basically said that you cannot have blood testing in DUI cases without consent of the victim or the defendant. But what it says is part of that consent can't be coerced by saying, if you don't give us your blood, we're going to be able to sentence you more harshly. And that was the law of Pennsylvania. So now what we've had to do is we've had to retrain our police, and we've had to re-examine how we handle those DUI cases so that we're able to get the best outcomes. But there was a whole laundry list of cases after those decisions came down that were impacted because the police did their job as they were trained to do for years and years and years. Prosecutors made agreements as they have for years and years and years based on reliance of that statute on the blood draws being constitutional in Pennsylvania. And it wasn't until it was declared unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court, now we've had to review and change. So that's part of the law. The law is constantly changing. Judges have to be aware of that. You can never take it personally. That's the biggest thing. You can't take a reversal personally. You do the best you can with the facts you have before you and apply the law as you know it.
We're talking with Pat Dougherty, one of the 4 candidates vying for the seat of Court of Common Pleas in Indiana County. Should there be a specific court for specific types of cases, such as those involving veterans or drugs?
Well, what we have right now, Todd, is we do have a drug treatment court program, okay? Because you and I have talked numerous times about how the heroin epidemic has impacted Indiana County, not only on the streets but also in the courtrooms. And that's a situation where we're able to give someone an opportunity to, short of incarceration, to deal with their addiction, try to get a job, become tax-paying members of society, and start being makers instead of, the old term makers instead of takers. Mm-hmm. And that program has been very successful in our county. I would be in favor of a veterans court. I would also consider a mental health court. These issues, somebody that has spent time serving our country to protect the freedoms that we take so dearly and hold so dearly, if they're battling a mental health issue, if they're, we want to try to get them linked into services with the Veterans Administration if appropriate. I'm not saying they should get a pass. I'm not saying they should get a walk. But because of their status as serving our country, I think it's something that we should explore and we should look at. Same with mental health issues. I've often said the three largest inpatient mental health facilities in this country are Rikers Island, which is a prison, Cook County Jail in Chicago, which is a prison, and the LA County Jail, which is a prison. Okay? Those are the three largest mental health inpatient facilities. So I ask myself, why are we incarcerating people with mental health issues? Is that the best place for them? I think we'd be able to tie in with the Community Guidance Center, provide individuals with services, and try to get them into recovery. Because, one of the biggest things with mental health, in my opinion, is, mental health is no different than any other physical health issue that you face. If somebody had diabetes, we're not going to lock them up in the county jail if they don't take their insulin or they eat an extra piece of cake. So should we do that with somebody that has mental illness? And I don't think we should. We need to try to get them the most effective treatment. So the goal should be to keep them out of the system.
What, in your opinion, are the factors that must be involved in approving a plea bargain?
Well, number one, the victim must be consulted. I truly believe that the victim should be always consulted. Doesn't mean the victim has to agree, but the victim must be informed and consulted. Obviously, I've done that as a district attorney. I also believe that it should be fair all around. Plea bargaining has such a negative implication. People hear that term and they just cringe. I, as a prosecutor, cringe. But the reality of it is, Todd, we're handling between 16 and 1,800 criminal cases a year. We have 3 judges. We have 11 trial weeks a year. So if everybody went to trial, that just would not be a good thing. But when we're evaluating the plea bargain, is it fair? Is it reasonable? Is it based on the law? And I think if we look at those things, coupled with the consent of the victim and consent of the police officer, if everybody's happy with the outcome, that's something that should be weighed as well.
Would you, as a judge, play an active role in recommending to either of the parties that they get involved in a plea bargain?
I don't believe that should be the court's position. I believe that if the elected district attorney and his staff feel that there's an appropriate plea bargain, then and the defense is willing to consider that, then I'll listen. I would listen and consider the facts if it's an appropriate offer. That's the one thing we must remember is judges always have the right to reject a plea bargain. Every time a plea is accepted, it goes in front of the court. So, we have to be, I wouldn't say I'd be an active participant trying to get cases settled because I believe that's best suited for the litigants to handle.
We have less than a minute. Can the courts play a more active role in addressing the opioid crisis?
I think the courts can be involved. I think they can understand and have a working knowledge of the issue. Because if you don't have a working knowledge of the issue, then how can you fashion your sentences? How can you encourage people to get the help that they need if you don't really understand the issue? This issue affects all types of people, families and victims as well as defendants. And I think having judges that have been in that fight and understand the issue, I think would be very beneficial.
Mr. Dougherty, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Todd.